To drill down a little further into the mid-year budget review, a short time ago the Treasurer Wayne Swan joined political editor Chris Uhlmann in Canberra.
Wayne Swan, welcome.
Good to be with you.
How did the budget deficit for this year blow out by $14.5 billion in 6 months?
Well, because there's been a very substantial downgrade in revenues, something like $20 billion over the forward estimates. But not only that, I mean, what we've had since the beginning of the global financial crisis right to now has been a downgrade of $130 billion. And on top of that, we've now got something like an additional $20 billion downgrade as well. So that's something like $5 billion in 11-12. On top of that, we've had the whole impact of the floods in Queensland. So we've made some prepayment to Queensland, which is essential, but also we've paid some more money for disasters which occurred before the floods and cyclones this year. So that's substantial. Plus, also, we've accelerated the delivery of infrastructure. I don't think many people can argue with that. And on top of that, we've had the prepayment, the down payment we're making to households and businesses for the clean energy package. So all of those things, I think, demonstrate that the blowout in the deficit this year is not a direct result of the government simply going out and spending. Far from it.
But the last part of what you mentioned is discretionary spending, and $5 billion of this, for this $14.5 billion, is discretionary spending.
Well, you can call Queensland flood expenditure discretionary.
No,
I certainly
not calling
don't
that
do
part of it. I was talking about the last part that you mentioned.
Well, the $1.4 billion in terms of accelerating the infrastructure into Queensland, some people would say, well, why don't you leave that for later? But if you know about the weakness in the non-residential construction sector, it's a pretty good idea, if the projects are ready to go, to do more now. So we're doing all of those things, and that's the responsible thing to do. Now, a lot of people are saying the surplus of $1.5 billion, it's too small. The fact is that we've got a responsible fiscal policy, a consolidation which is going on over a number of years. It's a consolidation we said we would put in place when we moved some years ago to stimulate the economy. It is recognised by the rating agencies, the IMF, the OECD, most market economists, as being one of the biggest consolidations seen in our history, and we're continuing to do that.
But how are you going to hit a target of $1.5 billion in a surplus in 6 months' time when you're $14.5 billion out over the last 6 months?
Well, because we are expecting growth to come back to trend. This is very important. Whilst we have revised down our growth, what we've seen is a revision of global growth figures. That's flowing through to Australia. We're expecting growth to be a trend. There probably isn't a developed economy elsewhere in the world that in these conditions can still look at growth at about trend. That's why it's appropriate to still aim for a surplus. That's why it's appropriate to still put our fiscal consolidation in place, despite the fact that over the forward estimates, our revenues have been revised down by $20 billion.
Certainly, but haven't you created this surplus by a lot of accounting tricks, accounting chicanery, as Saul Eastlake calls it, by dragging forward some spending, by pushing back some other spending?
There is nothing unusual about what we have done here. The fact is, it was absolutely imperative to make sure that money went to Queensland in terms of flood reconstruction. That's not discretionary. We have had back-to-back disasters, natural disasters in Queensland. And yes, you could call it discretionary to prepay some more money for important infrastructure. I don't. And of course, we made it very clear some time ago that we would be upfront making available that additional assistance to households and industry. That is the normal budgeting process. And if you go through the history of budgets, you will find that from time to time, for very good reasons, governments do those things. And we've done them for the reasons that I've just outlined.
But you've delayed a workplace tax deduction, for example, by 1 year, save yourself $1.2 billion. What is the accounting reason for doing that, beyond protecting a $1.5 billion surplus in a single year?
Because we are tightening our belt across the board. You see, we are making significant gross savings. The net savings we are making here are around $7 billion.
But that's one's a delay, not a cut.
No, that's right. And we've delayed some other measures as well, because we delay when we say a measure is worthwhile, but we can't quite afford it at the moment. That is the essence of good budgeting, and delays are perfectly legitimate. It is not the first time in history that a government has decided to delay a measure. It happens all the time. I'm very open about that. We have delayed it because it's not affordable at the current time.
You've also wound down the contingency reserve, which is something you criticised the opposition for during the last election campaign.
That's not correct. We have done nothing different with the contingency reserve in this MyEFO than is done or has been done in previous MyEFOs. The opposition do not understand the contingency reserve. I know they go around the place telling journalists how important it is. We've done nothing in this MyEFO which is in any way any different from a previous one.
Why is it setting at its lowest level
because
in
it
that
is
particular
always
financial year?
Because it is always reset that way in the mid-year review. They don't understand that.
Now, you're cutting the baby bonus by $400 and freezing the indexation. Isn't that taking cash out of the hands of the poor?
Well, the fact is that we have to tighten our belt. And of course, over time, we have made additional payments when it comes to childcare. We've put in place a paid parental leave scheme. We've put in place an educational cash rebate. This particular payment has grown very strongly. It started off at $3,000, it's now $5,400. We need to make it sustainable. We think $5,000 is a generous payment. We understand that many new mums and dads do have significant expenses, but it's important to make this sustainable in the long term, and that's why we decided to reset it.
Now, of course, the efficiency dividend's going up again for public service departments. That's about a $1.5 billion cut from then. That's a very blunt instrument, isn't it? You're making inefficient departments work the same way as efficient departments.
No, I don't believe that's the case at all. It's very important that when we are making budget cuts and we're putting in place deferrals that you're talking about, that the Commonwealth demonstrates that it's exercising the same restraint as it expects elsewhere. And we think an efficiency dividend is the best way to do it. The opposition want a freeze, which is the blunt instrument, which doesn't work. What we are putting in place is a dividend which gives the choice within departments how they go about meeting that expense.
Will there be job cuts?
Well, I don't think there'll be any forced redundancies, but it will be up to those agencies to follow the principles that we have outlined here.
Sure, there's a difference between forced redundancies and job cuts, though. Are you expecting there would be job cuts? Because 2/3 of the budget for most agencies would be wages.
Well, I think there is attrition of the workforce of something like 7% a year when you come to the Commonwealth Public Service. I think this is a modest efficiency dividend which should be affordable, but the choice will be within departments as to how they make those changes in their budgets.
Can you do this every single year, require efficiency dividends without essentially at the end of the process affecting services?
Well, we certainly are not going to be out there affecting services. It will get tougher, but it's getting tougher for other people in a variety of ways, and we just thought it was only fair that that is shared across the budget, and that's what we've decided to do.
Now, if Europe goes south, all of these figures go south with it, don't they?
Well, certainly if there's a dramatic change in the global economy, then we would sit back and look at what we would do in those circumstances. I think we have got a proven track record of being able to handle extreme volatility in the global economy. We demonstrated that back in 2008 and 2009, but I'm not going to speculate about that. What we've done here is taken into account the uncertainty as we know it at this point in time, and we've got the right balance between bringing the budget back to surplus on the one hand and supporting the economy and jobs on the other.
Will you continue to chase losses of revenue with budget cuts?
Well, there's a very big downgrade in revenue, and we haven't necessarily put in place...
But will you continue to do it forever?
I want to say what we've done here. We haven't replaced all of the revenue we've lost through the budget savings that we've put in place in this statement. Those are judgments which we would make based on the growth outlook. You see, our fiscal rules, which we outlined at the height of the global financial crisis, made it very clear that when growth came back to trend, we would be very serious about putting in place a range of measures to bring the budget back to surplus and then to build surpluses. At the moment, we've got growth at trend.
You're talking about a turnaround now of $40 billion in the space of a year. That's a huge fiscal drag. Is this the time to be doing that when there are threats on the horizon?
Well, I think the most important thing is to send a message to the world about the strong economic fundamentals in Australia. And let's go through them. Very low unemployment, reasonably moderate income growth, a really strong investment pipeline, strong, stable financial institutions and good regulators. That stands Australia in really good stead, and that's why, through Fitch Ratings, who put out their ratings today, have given us the AAA rating. The three major agencies now give Australia that gold-plated AAA rating, the first time that's ever happened. And why? Because they look at our low debt and our strong economy, and we need to send that message to the world.
Wayne Swan, thank you.
Good to be with you.